had multiple 5-star reads. I am more of a vibes girly, so I'm going to tell you more so about the vibes than I am about the plot. This was the year that I decided I wanted to become a sci-fi girly. They're jumping into each other's pants because of the sexual tension. So it's one of those kinds of books. I love a single daddy book, and this one was written so well. Hello and welcome, sweet friends. Today is exciting because we are going to do lots of chit-chatting about all the books that I read in the month of January. I was actually shocked at how well my reading month went in January because December was kind of just like a so-so month. So I was really hoping to start off 2026 with a bang when it came to reading, and the lineup that I ended up with did not disappoint. I had multiple 5-star reads. I tried a whole new genre that I've never read before, and I absolutely fell in love with it. The group choice that my book club picked for the month of January was such a good read. It made me cry, and yeah, I've started some series that I am so excited to continue in 2026. So let's go ahead and start with the first book that I read in the month of January. So the first book that I ended up reading was Heavenly Bodies by Amani Aru. Wow. I absolutely loved the magic system in this book, and I cannot wait to see where this goes because we do end this book on a bit of a cliffhanger. I'm going to be so real with you guys here for a minute. I wish that I was someone who could remember every little fine detail and description and the overall arching plot line of a book, but I am a mom. Okay, and I really struggle to utilize all brain cells that I do have left that my children have not stolen from me. So I'm one of those people that reads a book, loves it. Within 1 or 2 days after I finish reading it, don't ask me the fine details of the plot because I have already forgotten them. Once I get back into the series, then I can remember what happened, but I am more of a vibes girly, so I'm going to tell you more so about the vibes than I am about the plot or synopsis of a book. I really did get on here thinking that I could give you guys like a good solid synopsis or plot, but I don't remember. But what I do remember is I ended up rating this a 4.5 stars because I loved the magic system in this world. I love anything to do with stars, zodiac, horoscope, signs, because I do believe in that kind of stuff. So when you mix that in a romantasy setting, I was sold. What I loved about this book is that our main character, Alara, is kidnapped by the rival kingdom in this universe, and then she is brought in by the king, and they want to use her as a weapon because she cannot be killed by these stars who are like the gods of this universe. And so the prince of the kingdom, Lorenzo, is basically tasked to train her, to turn her into this weapon, so that when the gods or the stars do come down to rain any sort of terror on a kingdom, they have Alara as a weapon to protect them. And so this book provided us that amazing trope of their training together, and they are rivals or enemies, and then obviously things start getting a little hot and heavy between the two. And what I love about this is at the end of this book in particular, usually it's always the damsel in distress that ends up happening in books, whereas this one is kind of the reverse. So I'm really interested to see what's going to happen in book 2. It is on my February TBR, and I'm really excited to see what's going to end up happening to Alara and Lorenzo in the next book. I also really loved a lot of the side characters in this book, so I'm hoping we get a little bit more from some of those side characters, which I'm thinking we will, because from how this book finished, I think there's going to be some quests that end up happening, or some kind of adventure where Alara is going to have to go off with some other characters to help our boy Lorenzo. Next, I listened to Before I Forget, and this was my Patreon group choice for the month of January. So how it works in the group, in my Patreon group, is everybody kind of puts their suggestion in for a book that we want to choose to maybe read together as a group, and then we vote usually on the top 3, and this was the one that ended up winning. And this is a book all about a daughter who ends up kind of getting a little bit lost in her life, and she ends up moving back in with her father in his little cabin on the lake because he is diagnosed with dementia or Alzheimer's, and so she kind of becomes his caretaker. Her older sister is going to Europe for a job opportunity there, so then our main character ends up having to take care of her father. This is such a sensitive subject for a lot of people. So many of us have been affected by dementia and Alzheimer's. I know I have in my family, and I enjoyed this book so much, you guys. I gave it 5 stars because it was such a a quirky twist on what people kind of go through when they do have Alzheimer's and dementias. And it is a sad subject, but the way that this author wrote it made it so heartwarming and beautiful that it was like a healing experience reading this story. I loved the oracle twist in the book, and it was such a good book to listen to on audio. So I highly recommend listening to this book if you are looking for a cozy, feel-good family book about Alzheimer's or dementia. Maybe a bit of a sensitive subject, but it's definitely worth the read. So next I ended up reading Vow of Revenge by P. Rain. This one I ended up rating 3 stars. I feel like it's pretty typical for those like university dark academia mafia type books where it's not something that's going to blow your socks off, but if you're looking for an easy, short read that gives you some spice and a little bit of mystery behind it, then this could be the book for you. We have our 2 main characters, Mirabella and Marcello, and Mirabella is not your typical mafia daughter who is training to become a mafia wife. She is kind of going against the grain. She doesn't want to be just another housewife. She would love to be more a part of the workings of a mafia family. In the Sicaro Academy, it's like all of the big mafia leaders' kids kind of go to this academy, and it's like a safe place. So even though all of these mafias are like against each other in the real world, when the kids come into this academy, it's like a safe place. So really there's like no violence allowed, no weapons. They don't have phones or access to any communication except for like one family call on a Sunday. And Mirabella, is actually engaged to Marcello. Marcello and his father had got into an accident at the beginning of this book where his father ended up dying, and Mirabella was engaged to Marcello. Mirabella was very excited when she thought that Marcello was dead because she didn't want to be another one of those mafia wives. And then when Marcello turns up at the academy, not dead, that's when she's like, oh snap, now I'm stuck with this guy. And so I would say it's kind of like your enemies to lovers, but it's like the corny type where you're like, they hate each other, but then they're jumping into each other's pants because of the sexual tension. So it's one of those kinds of books. So if you like one that's got that love-hate situation, touch her and die, she's my wife, don't look at her, then you might like this book. There are other books in this series. It's kind of an interconnected series. There are 3 other books that follow some of the other mafia kids that are also in this academy as well. I will be continuing on with this series because there are a few of the other kids in here that do intrigue me enough to see how their story will end within this interconnected series. And we moved on to Caught Up by Liz Tom 40. Everybody says that the first 2 books are pretty all right. And then once you get to this one, you become hooked. Windy City series fan. And I am here to say that that is correct. I love a single daddy book, and this one was written so well. I loved Kai and Miller. I love their personality, their little quirks, all of the things that they had to overcome in this one. And oh, little Max, he was such a cute little character. Sometimes when kids are written into books, it can be like so, but this one was written so adorably, and I adored every minute of this book, and I would highly recommend it. Really excited for Monty's book that will be coming out this year. So that's Miller's dad. And oh, I am also definitely excited for Kai's brother's book, which comes next in that series. So I will immediately be adding that book to my shelf also this year. Now, this is where I kind of had a little bit of a hiatus from the TBR that I planned, because this was the year that I decided I wanted to become a sci-fi girly, and I wanted to try some sci-fi books. And everybody said this was the series to start with. So I ended up picking up Red Rising by Pierce Brown. And now I'm a sci-fi girly because I don't know what is in this book and this series, because when I first read this one and I read the first half, I was like, this is a book written by a man for men. Like, it was just like bro vibes, hardcore bro vibes in this book. And there's like no fluff to the writing. It's straight to the point. There's no filler words. And so I was like, okay, this is a very different style of writing than I'm used to. But once I got into the flow of Pierce Brown's writing, I was hooked. I fell in love with the characters in this, and you wouldn't think that there would be much of a love story within a bro sci-fi book, but the romance subplot to this is such a huge and pivotal part of this story, and I'm telling you, it was beautiful. There are heartbreaking moments within these books, and I ended up reading all three of these books back to back to back, and for me to literally pick up the next book in the series right after finishing one, that hasn't happened in a really long time, you guys. So that says something about this series, because I was dedicated to get through these first three books in this saga. I do have the next three here behind me, as you can see, but I honestly needed a little bit of an emotional break because these books are very heavy. They are very emotionally traumatizing, which I do love in a book, don't get me wrong. And I'm very excited to get to the next ones, but they do say that those ones are even darker than these ones. And I was like, okay, that means I'm going to need to do a little bit of palette cleansing before I dive into the rest of the Pierce Brown Red Rising universe. Plus, there is still one more book that he has not published yet, Red God, and it is rumored to be coming out this summer, but there is not a release date yet. And I'm like, if we get a cliffhanger like we did at the end of Golden Sun, when I finish, I think it's Lightbringer, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it through, especially without knowing when exactly the last book in this universe is going to come out. So, anyway, 5-star series so far, and I am so excited to go ahead and pick up the next set of books in this universe. But again, I just needed a little bit of an emotional reprieve. Okay. And with that emotional reprieve, I decided to pick up a book that has been on my shelf for the longest time. And the only reason I hadn't picked it up was because there were so many mixed reviews on it. And I have a lot of books that are like that on my shelf, where I see so many other people's opinions on the book, and then their opinion kind of almost muddies the water of whether or not I think it's going to be a good book or not without even starting the book. And that was When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker. I ended up rating this book 3.5 stars. It's a big book, but I don't feel like a lot of big things happened. Like, there was stuff that happened, but not stuff where I was like, wow, like that was really important to the plot or that was such an epic moment. It was just a lot of like random things kind of mishmashed together. But like the foundation of the plot was definitely interesting because I do love the dragons. I love the magic system. I love the universe that this is in. But it was almost like the female main character, Rave. She was like, I love a stabby FMC. Don't get me wrong. I love it when they're stabby. But then she really irritated me near the end of the book when she kind of figured out the truth about something. But then she just lived in denial and was still living in denial by the end of the book. And I'm like, you're telling me you find all of that out and you're just still like not on board with it? Like, I don't understand. How do you turn a man like Cain down when he's done all of the things that he did for you? So I will be picking up the next book, which comes out here in the next few months, because this one ends on a very intriguing cliffhanger, which I think is going to make things very interesting in the second book. So I don't know. I feel like this was one of those books where it was almost like the first book was the big world building one where it's giving a lot of background context and maybe just putting a few important pieces in place. And then hopefully in the next few books, some epic stuff will happen, because I'll be really disappointed if it doesn't, because I feel like there is so much potential in this plot and in this universe. And then the last book that I read, which I am really proud of myself because I only had 3 days left in January to get this book done and I flew through it. And that was Glint by Raven Kennedy. So I'm bound and determined to finish the Plated Prisoners series this year. I read Guild last year, listened to it on audiobook, and for me it almost kind of reminded me of that When the Moon Hatched vibes, where it's like not a whole lot happened, but a lot of the chess pieces were put in place for this big larger universe. Because I know there is quite a few books in this series. I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 7 books overall, I believe. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure there's 7. And so when I started reading this one, I was like, okay, like something big's gonna happen, because a big thing did happen at the end. But then it was just kind of like, again, like a whole lot of nothing really happened. It was just, again, moving the pieces on the chessboard at the beginning to like get stuff into place before, I'm guessing, the big epicness of this series happens. And you might think, well, so then, like, why are you still reading this book? That doesn't sound very interesting. I don't know what it was, but for a book that didn't have a whole lot happening, there was a lot happening, okay? Because you're learning a lot of stuff about our female main character, Auren, and just her mental space, her background, her trauma that she's been through, her life experience, and her just trying to navigate basically not being in a gilded cage anymore and trying to find herself and struggling with her attachment to Midas and whether or not what he was feeding her and making her believe was kind of true, if that makes sense. So I gave this one 4 stars because even though not a whole lot happened, it was still like, okay, like I feel like this is setting up to be one of the most epic character development arcs ever. And my boy Rip in here. I'm very excited to see where things will go with him in this book. So overall, it was a great reading month in January. I am very happy with the series that I've started, series that I have continued. I think there's going to be some more God tier series that I add to my list of series that will live rent-free in my head forever. So be sure to stay tuned to see if that ends up coming true, because if you have not checked out my February TBR video yet, go ahead and do that, because I am continuing on with some series. I am maybe starting a few more because, let's be honest, I am nothing if not a series whore, and I love to just pile more series on top of my plate before finishing other series. That's a toxic trait of mine that I've accepted, and that is just who I am as a reader, which is fine. We all have reader traits that aren't healthy, and that's mine. So I hope whatever book you are reading today brings you some kind of joy